Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. And surprise, you guys didn't expect a match today, but here it is. Because if you guys will remember, last year on my birthday, I surprised everyone by giving you guys a present and uploading a bonus match. Well, this year we're doing the same thing, except it's a tournament match. And it's a tournament match in which, in the video, if you guys watched it discussing the tournament match, I said on paper to me felt like almost maybe the most equal match just based on who these guys have played, their wins, their losses, and their demeanor and how they kind of when they debate. It's a really interesting pair up. We have the number 6 seed, Shaun Hunter, who obviously the last time he was here was the number 1 contenders match against Chadwick Webb. Obviously, Chad did take the victory on that. Vice versa, we have Will Cohen, who is here, who is also coming in off of a loss after from the summer tournament when he took on Jeremy Adams. So these guys both are coming into this from kind of the same place. They played people who have gone to higher places in the league just at the moment. They're coming in off a loss and they're looking for that win. And I think it's going to be potentially an interesting motivator for either of these guys. Or maybe I'm just some asshole hyping my own league up and they don't really care about this. Let's find out. Introducing first, with a record of 3 wins, 2 defeats, he is the Virtuoso, Will Cohen. Will, welcome back to the Battleground, sir. How are you feeling coming into this tonight?
I'm feeling strangely confident. I don't exactly know why. However, the last time that I felt strangely confident coming into this, I fucking lost. So we'll kind of see how this goes. But I did want to. I did have something prepared, which I didn't tell anyone about. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this.
Sure.
This is not from me. This is not from anyone else other than my opponent today. And Aaron, you should know this because you have the receipt for this. I quote, "Will, you're going to do amazing. When I speak to you, I'm pleasantly reminded how intelligent, articulate, and knowledgeable you are." Which makes me think he has no idea who the fuck I am. In all seriousness, I think this is gonna be a very good match. Like you said, we do seem to have similar styles where either we have really good choices or we have off the wall choices that we can defend pretty easily. I think this is going to be a tough match. I think this is going to be a fun match. I think anyone who's watching this match is going to have a lot of fucking fun with this. I'm going to shut up, which is a first for me, and let's get this going.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back for just a moment while we introduce your opponent. Coming in with a record of 4 wins, 3 defeats, and 2 knockouts, he is the Porcelain Plate, Shaun Hunter. Shaun,
Heyo.
Welcome back, sir. It's been a bit since you've been here. Welcome back to the tournament. So I guess we'll just get to the question I guess was posed by your opponent. After reading your waxing poetic about his skills, do you know who he is, or was that a genuine compliment, or what's going on here?
I do know who Will Cohen is because I've talked to him after a bunch of, I believe, my matches that he's judged a couple, and all those things I said are very true because he stuck around in the chat afterwards, and I've chatted to him through video and whatnot. So yeah, all those things were honest, and I know who he is. Okay, I know him through the internet. I know him. He might not exist in real life, but on the internet, he exists.
Absolutely. In this matrix, he does exist.
Yes.
So yeah, obviously coming into this, you're coming in off the back of that number 1 contenders match, which I'm sure, obviously it did not go the way that you wanted it to. You said in the aftermath of it that because of things going on, you came in underprepared. In a moment of honesty, which I respect, you felt disappointment at the way you played the game because you felt that you didn't bring it the way that the game deserved. So kind of how have you been able to reshift that coming into this?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think I'm coming off of that loss. It just, yeah, it made me prepare a little bit more for this match. Not as much as I wanted to, but there's only so much time you could give things. But I feel way more prepared than the last match. Feeling good. I don't know if I'm feeling. I never go into a match feeling confident. I just know how I'm going to attack the questions, and there's a couple different ways I'm going to do that. So I'm just excited to do this thing.
All right. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and bring Will back in, and let's go ahead and get into the debate. Movie Battleground is a best of 5 rounds. The first to 3 points wins the match. Each round of debate is going to be worth 1 point. If a competitor happens to take the first 3 points in a row, that is a victory by knockout. If after the end of 4 rounds there's a 2-2 tie, we will go on to the blind round, but we'll deal with that should we have to. In terms of how the actual debate will work, the competitors have had the questions. They've had as much time as they can possibly give to it to prepare. They'll each have a minute to open up their argument. Followed by that, they will have 2 minutes of solo speaking time to expand, explain, rebut, whatever they choose to do. There will be a 4-minute back and forth open discussion, followed by a 60-second closing, at which point they will wrap up their arguments. Backstage, I have 3 judges in the form of Zach, Chris, and Richie. They will join us on screen following the debates each round. Based off what the competitors have said, they will then give their deliberation on who they believe won. With that said, do either of you have any questions for me, or are we good to get going?
Shaun, you're muted.
I'm muted. Good to go, and good luck, Will, is what I said.
Knuckles.
Your knuckles.
All right, for all you knuckle freaks out there, get a screenshot of that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move into the match, and we are going to get to your first question, which is a viewer-submitted question. I did not write this question, although it's so basic that you think I would have. That's not a shot, by the way. That came off wrong. I appreciate anyone who sends a question, basic or not. It's just sometimes you guys think a little harder than I do because well, you don't do this every day of the week. If you are watching this video and you want to see your question in a Movie Battleground match, you can submit it to my email, officialaarinknoll@gmail.com. Please be sure to include your name on the email because if I don't know who's sending it, I'm not going to use it. But that said, you can send your questions. You can send fucking 40 questions in. I actually had somebody submit 40 questions in an email, like one straight email. You watch the videos, whichever name shows up the most, you can kind of figure who it is.
Sorry about that.
Austin. But with that said, we're going to get into it. And this question was submitted today by somebody who you are both very familiar with, which is why I thought it would be funny to stick the question in this match. Submitted to us by Chadwick Webb. The question is, what is the best Jake Gyllenhaal film? Well, not films. You had to pick only one. That's a typo. But what is the best Jake Gyllenhaal film? He is an actor who I would say has really come into his own following 2014's Nightcrawler. I think that movie put a lot of spotlight on him as an actor, and the subsequent non-nomination for that role has really put the people behind Jake Gyllenhaal, unless you're a Taylor Swift fan, in which case you hate his guts. But he is an incredible actor who's had a lot of great performances in a lot of great films. Which one brings the best overall? So behind the scenes, Shaun, because you were the higher ranked opponent, you had the choice of which questions to go first on. You chose 2 and 4. So Will, this one is yours to go first on. I'm going to give you guys the timer. I'm going to wish you both the best of luck on this match. And Will, the timer will continue when you begin speaking.
So when you think of anyone, any actor with a best film, it's really hard to think of any director attached to that actor more influential and more just heavy hitting and just really always brings the best than David Fincher. And so the fact that Zodiac even exists in the first place, and the fact that it's so criminally underrated, is just a crime against humanity unto itself. But the reason why Zodiac is the best Jake Gyllenhaal film is because this film is the absolute complete package. There's some lighthearted moments, it gets down and gritty, it's extremely dramatic, and Jake Gyllenhaal is just giving it all, as well as everyone in the cast here. And David Fincher is, again, one of the best directors working to this day. And so Zodiac is the best by far.
Time. All right, Shaun, back over to you, sir. Opening minute.
Speaking of extremely influential directors, a very prolific director, one of the best directors working today that doesn't seem to miss whenever he comes out with a new film. Uh, Denis Villeneuve. I'm going with Prisoners, starring a bunch of amazing actors, including Jake Gyllenhaal. This film is fantastic. It puts you on the edge of your seat. Just again, going back to the cast, we have Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman, Paul Dano, Viola Davis, Melissa Leo, Maria Bello, and Terrence Howard. This is a tour de force in directing. The editing is amazing, cinematography, the score, I love. This film, in my opinion, is Denis Villeneuve's best film. It is the one that resonates with me the most, the one I love that I can rewatch over and over. It is a great, great film, and there's so much to it, so much more than there's the Zodiac.
And time. All right, so we have Zodiac versus Prisoners. I want to thank you guys for not making me say long titles. Will, back over to you, sir, when you're ready.
So there's one clear reason as to why Zodiac is infinitely better than Prisoners. It's because Prisoners, at about 2 hours long, feels like it. It's a slog to get through. There are some great performances, but it's just heavy, it's just heavy-handed, and it's just dark for being dark's sake. It just doesn't, it just doesn't work where it should. Whereas with Zodiac, this movie is about 3 hours long, and you do not feel that length whatsoever. It's over in the blink of an eye, and 3 hours have just flown by. But those 3 hours are deep. There are there are a lot of things going on, and so you can easily follow it though. We have Jake Gyllenhaal, you have Robert Downey Jr., you have Mark Ruffalo, you have these three people, all from different aspects, from reporting to cops to everything, just going back and forth, trying to figure out this Zodiac case. And the Zodiac case is a thrilling case to begin with. And even though it was recently solved, we actually know who the Zodiac killer is. It doesn't change the fact that this movie is still a banger over 10 years later. With Prisoners, again, going dark for dark's sake, you see a man torture relentlessly a mentally handicapped person, even when he knows that that person has no answers to where his daughters are. He is still torturing this person. That's just that just feels evil, and especially as a parent, you know of someone who, of a young child. I'm sorry. Does this street justice actually work for me? No, it doesn't, especially when the girls were lost on his watch. The reason why Zodiac works is because it follows a great narrative. It's lighthearted when it needs to be, it's dark when it needs to be, and it's just the entire package overall.
And time. All right, Shaun, back over to you.
First of all, Zodiac drags in the second act. It is not as compelling. It does not put you on the edge of your seat like Prisoners does. Both films are around the same length. Prisoners is 2 hours and 33 minutes. Zodiac is 2 hours and 37 minutes. Zodiac feels like the longer film. Going back to Dark for Dark's Sake, Roger Deakins doesn't do Dark for Dark's Sake. Two-time Oscar winner Roger Deakins is one of the best cinematographers that has ever touched celluloid. Okay, the the images, the lighting, the looking at just around Hugh Jackman's home in the film, the room that they keep Paul Dano in, the mother's house at the end of the film, the beautiful lighting when Jake Gyllenhaal's character Loki is driving back to the precinct. It's amazing. It's not Dark for Dark's Sake at all. I totally disagree with that. Not only does Roger Deakins just crush the cinematography, I think Prisoners has a way better score than Zodiac, which I really love, by Johannesson. It's a great score. that's really moving. It really suits the film, the dark moments and the light moments. And going back to the villain of the film, you know, like what Hugh Jackman does to Paul Dano's character. I love that that Prisoners has multiple villains because not only is the mother the villain of the film, but Hugh Jackman is also the villain of the film. You don't like the things that he does, but it's great to see the lengths that a father will go to. Going back to Zodiac, you don't really know who the villain of the film is. You don't see a face, you can't relate to it. You never have any emotion to it because you don't know who that villain is. It's not so clear cut. When you do see him, he's wearing a mask. I don't feel that kind of emotional connection that I do to seeing Hugh Jackman go down that well of like true evil.
And time. All right, so we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. As always, a reminder that competitors, while you are obviously playing to get your points in, be respectful to each other as much as possible, although I'll never fight passion. You guys know the line to ride. You're experienced at this. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
Not only is Prisoners a better film than Zodiac, it has a better Jake Gyllenhaal performance in it. He's bigger, his character is just bigger and better and adds more to the story than Zodiac. In Zodiac, he's just like a young boy. There's not much backstory to him that you see. With Jake Gyllenhaal in Prisoners, with his character Loki, he brought so much to that role. He was the one who added all the tattoos, the facial tics, all of that, all the jewelry and everything to give Loki more of a character, which I really appreciate.
Okay, so that's an interesting little aside, but at the same time, you know, if you're going to compare Zodiac, you know, his performance between Zodiac and Prisoners, half the times it feels like he is just sleepwalking through Prisoners, whereas Zodiac, he is the young, energetic go-getter. He shows that energy throughout the entire thing. So so also one thing I want to say really quick, you're saying, oh, well, you don't understand, you don't know who the villain is in Zodiac. We never actually see this face. Dude, that is the point of the film. The point of the film is that you don't see them. The point of the film is that he never got caught during the time when all the events occurred. That is the point of the film, and it is absolutely compelling watching these people virtually ruin their lives, put their lives in danger to seek out this this unsolvable mystery. It is extremely compelling. Whereas there's there's this pseudo mystery in Prisoners, and you're supposed to, you call Hugh Jackman the villain of the film. Well, that's completely unintentional. He is supposed to be the sympathetic character. You're supposed to say, oh, well, this is the lengths that a father will go. So rah, rah, rah. No, that's just, no, that is absolutely horrible. He's doing all these things as a compensation.
I think for your film, let
me just finish my one point, please. He is doing all of these things because he knows damn well that he and his wife were too busy getting drunk with their friends instead of watching after their girls, and that's why they went missing.
Doing very normal human stuff like drinking with your friends, having a dinner party. No one's ever expecting their child to be stolen. Zodiac at times is a very boring police procedural. Again, you don't see the villain's face. That's a detriment to that film because you cannot relate. You don't feel emotion. Did you say time?
No, I said why.
Sorry, because you're never scared of the Zodiac because you don't know who he is. Whereas in Prisoners, you're scared of Hugh Jackman, of what he's going to do. And you don't know if Paul Dano actually did it or not. You're always on the fence because you have no idea. And especially when you go to the mother's house near the end of the film, it's great. And seeing Hugh Jackman do a dual role like that, where he's the good guy, but also the villain at the same time, that's exactly what Denis Villeneuve wanted in his films. If you've seen his filmography, that's what he does all the time. Especially, just talk about Zodiac and how bad it is, especially with the villain. It stumbles and has a rather unfulfilling conclusion because you just don't catch the Zodiac. It's not as fulfilling as the conclusion of Prisoners.
But you understand that is the point. We're completely missing the point here, Shaun, and that that is why you're kind of behind on the 8 ball here. With Prisoners, Paul Dano is like flat out telling you the entire time, and he is too, he's too mentally challenged to not be telling the truth. So the truth that he has nothing to do with it. Whereas with Zodiac, no, there's
You
no
don't know the
fat.
truth. You don't
There's
know how
absolutely
mentally
no fat
damaged
on
he
this film
is.
whatsoever. You say it, you say the second act stumbles, but you don't exactly, you don't tell me why it stumbles. You don't tell me why that this
It
film is
stumbles because
fat
Jake
at all.
Gyllenhaal is doing nothing at all.
He is doing everything,
And
and it's
time.
great.
All right, you guys have 1 minute left on the clock each to close. Will, I'll go back over to you first when you're ready.
Jake Gyllenhaal is absolutely the heart and soul of Zodiac, but he is not alone in the journey. Mark Ruffalo, you get to see him and his struggles trying to even justify why even investigating this as a police officer. We get to see how Robert Downey Jr., this promising reporter, stumbles and falters in his career in pursuit of this, and Jake Gyllenhaal is there, putting his family, putting his girlfriend at risk, putting his family at risk, putting his own self at risk, investigating this. We get to see the murders, and we get to see murders, the murders of the Zodiac. We get to see the investigation happen. It is a police procedural, but it's far from a boring one. With Prisoners, all we get, Prisoners, what it really boils down to is just a bunch of torture, and we get to see what that does. I'm sorry, that's not entertaining to me. If there's better ways of telling the exact same story of Prisoners, but they did not do that at all.
All right, and then Shaun, final minute.
It's not just a bunch of torture. You see how this kidnapping affects all the members of the family, and even Terrence Howard's family when they're looking for their kid. You see how it affects Loki and all the trouble and drama that he's going through to help find this kid. And then you have the most suspenseful ending in the world when Hugh Jackman, the villain of the film, gets his comeuppance, and he is literally trapped. And we don't know if Loki's gonna find him or not, which is a far superior ending than Zodiac. Jake Gyllenhaal is the central figure in Zodiac, but he's the weakest link. He could literally be played by any other actor. His character does not stand out. Tobey Maguire could do that role, and it wouldn't change anything about that film or the performance at all. We are told repeatedly that Jake Gyllenhaal's character is a former Eagle Scout and a genuinely good guy, but that's not enough. We don't see that in the film. It's just a spoken history, whereas Loki, we could see so much about his character. It's a way better performance. The direction, the score, all the performance, the editing, the pacing, everything is just better in Prisoners.
And time. All right, guys, a great first argument there. Loving the passion. I'm going to go ahead and sit you both in the back to await the results as I bring the judges in. I have just a couple of quick fact checks for stuff that was said in the round. So when it comes to the runtime of the films, they are almost identical in runtime. Prisoners does come in at 2 hours and 33 minutes, and Zodiac, while it is the longer of the two films, comes in at about 2 hours and 37 minutes. Obviously, pacing of a film and how it affects you is subjective, but in reality, they are only about 4 minutes off of each other. Roger Deakins, as mentioned, two-time Academy Award winner, was nominated for his cinematography for this film, although he was not yet a winner by the time this movie came out. He would go on to win in 2018 for Blade Runner. And then on the question of in Prisoners, is Hugh Jackman's character the villain, which was brought up. Though obviously the character of Keller Dover is the protagonist of Prisoners in that he is the character you follow. While Denis Villeneuve has never spoken on it himself, when you go to opinion pieces online and just try and source information, many people do also view the character as a villain within the story because he turns to villainous actions in his attempt to save his family. So it's more of a fall from grace, so to speak, by the way the character goes, which a lot of people believe is intentional, given a lot of the different names of the characters in the movie seem to imply some sort of religion undertone within the movie itself, even down to the fact that the detective looking for the kids is Detective Loki, a Norse deity. There is some sort of message that Denis is trying to put forth in the film. Although that's not what we're arguing here. We are arguing who sold the better film. That's an argument for a different show. Zach, I go to you. Based on what was said in the arguments, who gets your vote and what was the main selling point?
To me, I think Will a little bit ran away with it more because I felt like he had better, like more examples of why Zodiac is better, but also was able to greatly counter Shaun's movie. So that's why I voted for Will.
Okay, and then Chris, down to you.
Yeah, didn't go to opposite. I think it was back and forth a little bit. I think I heard more for Shaun with Prisoner, and it really got cut with arguing about some of the fact where I think they'll try to put in some facts in the end, but I think some of one game.
Okay. Which means, Richie, we will go over to you for the tiebreaker. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, man. This was like a tough spirited match. Yeah. At the end of the day, though, I went with Will because I thought he did a good job explaining why but thought that you didn't see the Zodiac's face, and I think he had good counter-arguments for that. And yeah, I just think overall he edged it for me, but it was very close.
All right, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back as I bring the competitors back in to head on to question number 2.
I'm sweating already. What about you, man?
Fuck, you know what? Those are both great films.
In your offense, you showed up in a blazer, dude. That's gonna happen.
That's very true.
Like, I mean, style points, but still. That is, I gotta give him credit. He shows up more stylish than me. I don't even make my bed half the time. Seriously, check the back corner of my screen. You can notice. I really don't try.
Yeah, you assume I'm wearing pants.
Huh?
Go on. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. All right. I got 1 point, so I'm gonna take shots. Let's move on to question number 2, which is coming in romantic comedies. Now, romantic comedies are a thing that we see a lot of every single year. More recently, they've been going to the streaming services, be it Netflix, Hulu, Paramount Plus has been getting in the game, whatever. But these are kind of the movies that have been leaving theaters more so and heading to streaming. But that doesn't mean that they're not still a big genre. Obviously, they're great for couples. They're great for just a nice, easy time. There's not a lot of thought that you necessarily have to put into these. But sometimes you strike gold with one and you wonder, what if they continued this? Because romantic comedies are not inherently franchisable. They're not something that continue. So the question on hand here is, what romantic comedy film should get a sequel that never got one? And I just have to say, I said this to them in the chat as well, I'm personally really excited for this because I think these guys legitimately might have picked my 2 favorite romantic comedies of all time as someone who does not enjoy the genre. So this is going to be interesting to hear. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get into it. Shaun, you are up first, so the timer will start when you speak, sir.
This amazing film came out in 2009. Sony neglected to give it a wide release. It just boggles my mind because it was doing so well. This is one of my favorite films of all time. My choice is 500 Days of Summer. The story of Tom, who's a hopeless romantic and bases all the reasons why he should be in a relationship and why he should like a woman based on all the media he's ever seen in his life. I believe when I saw this film, I agreed with Tom that summer, his love interest in the film, everything was her fault, but then growing up, you realize that everything is Tom's fault, and then as you grow up some more, you realize they're both at fault. This is a romantic comedy, but it's not a love story. This is a fantastic film that everyone should watch, and I think it deserves to be a sequel because I feel like I've watched this film growing up, and I have grown, and I think if a sequel came out, it would be where I'm at in my life, and that's why I'd like to see that.
And time. All right. Will, over to you.
So I feel like this is a tricky question because if a romantic comedy gets a sequel, usually something screwed up. Because romantic comedy sequels usually, by nature, suck. Bridget Jones' Edge of Reason. Miss Congeniality 2. Legally Blonde 2. Jesus Christ, no. So I chose a sequel. I chose a film that if you made a sequel to it, there's a lot of ground that you can do with it. And so I chose Forgetting Sarah Marshall. First of all, who doesn't want more potential Dracula puppet musicals? I know I do. There's, but even if they don't include that whatsoever, we can still take the further adventures of where Peter goes in his career. We could we can have them explore their relationship together. We could have just goofy cameos because he's in Hollywood. Plus, bring back Sarah Marshall. It would be hilarious.
And time. All right. And so to clear up a couple of points, as I like to do before we go ahead and get into this, for starters, for the judges, and I guess for those watching at home who like to judge, I did not. I did not force these guys to have to put together a pitch. Any details they give you should be considered as bonuses, and someone should not be penalized for not presenting a full pitch. Secondly, some would try and argue that Forgetting Sarah Marshall is ineligible because there technically is Get Him to the Greek, which is a pseudo sequel to one of the characters from that film. However, considering the movie basically all but ignores the events of Sarah Marshall down to the fact that Jonah Hill is recast as a different character, I've decided to allow for the fact that there could be a sequel to the actual main story. With all those out of the way, we're going to get back into the debate. Shaun, you have 2 minutes on the clock when you're ready, sir.
I feel like with Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Will said there's still a lot of ground to cover. All the ground that they could cover is the most least interesting parts of that film. I feel like the emotional change that characters go through are the interesting parts of the film. And at the end of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Jason Segel, he's got the girl. He's made life choices that have fundamentally changed his life. He's in the good spot. He's where he needs to be in his life. Whereas my film, it's just like a giant circle. Tom doesn't really become a better person at the end of my 500 Days of Summer. He goes to the job interview. He thinks he's over summer. He thinks he's done with all that romance and stuff like that. Goes to the job interview, and just before he goes in, he meets a girl named Autumn. He looks at the camera and breaks the fourth wall, and boom, he's back to being Tom, being a hopeless romantic just because he's listened to the Smiths too many times, because he's seen Sleepless in Seattle. His growth, his maturity is not done yet. And I want to see that because me as a person, I'm still maturing and I still have so much more growth to do. And I want to see Tom 10 plus years from now and where he's at, because he was not fundamentally changed at the end of 500 Days of Summer. He just went on an adventure. There's so much more room for that character to grow, especially Tom getting older. How does romance change? And especially with Tom, how he never really said anything he liked about Summer's personality in the film. It was all just like things that she liked. Imagine Tom in this day and age with online dating. How superficial that is now. How would that change Tom's perspective? I would love to drop Tom in this day and age and see what happens to him and see how he would grow as a person. Whereas Jason Segel, Peter, and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I think his journey's done, and I'm fine with that.
Time. All right, Will, back over to you, sir.
So it's interesting that he brought up that, that he wants to see Tom in this modern age. Well, if you put Tom in this modern age with the internet and social media and everything like that, instantly he would, be scooped up by a certain group of people. Those people are incels, because Tom is an incel. He wants to blame other people for his romantic failures. He wants to put the blame everywhere else, but never puts the blame on himself. Shaun said it himself, he doesn't grow. So a sequel would just be him doing the same thing again. He called it a circle. That's a huge hindrance for 500 Days of Summer, because we wanted to see that growth. But people always grow. People are supposed to always grow. And so Peter's journey is not necessarily at its end, because why? He is now in a new career path. I want to see him flourish in that career path. I want to see what that career path does to his romance life, because he might be with this girl at the end and they're in a loving relationship, but there's but you don't get over that kind of emotional baggage overnight. So we get to see him try and navigate a new relationship. That's exciting. I want to see him, I want to see what he does in the theater community. I want to see what he possibly does with writing and everything like that. There's so much that can be done. And that's not only the fact that he wrote the script, which means that he can bring in all of his friends, which means, come on, how many people could he bring in from How I Met Your Mother? How many people could he bring in from his time on the Muppets? There's all this great time that he could be having. And plus, again, more potential puppet musicals. That's great. With with a 500 Days of Summer thing, again, it would be basically have the cycle starting all over again. We get to see an insult be an insult for another 2 hours. That doesn't sound exciting to me. Watching some guy
And
grow,
time.
that's exciting.
All right, we're on to the 4-minute open discussion when you guys are ready.
First of all, Tom is not an incel. He's had girlfriends and relationships before Summer. They talk about it in the film. And speaking of the supporting cast, I would love to see where his friends, and especially his sister, who's played by Chloe Grace Moretz, where they're at, how they're helping out with Tom. And Tom also has a new career. And if we do a time jump, it's 10 years. Tom will change. We get older. Things change. And as a person, and I know there's people and guys out there that just relate to Tom. There's just trouble in relationships. You're figuring things out. Whereas Jason Segel, he's figured all that out. A movie, another Forgetting Sarah Marshall. There's no drama. There's no conflict. There's nothing. And I don't want to see him in How I Met Your Mother cast or anything like that. I don't think that would be interesting at all. I think it'd be super interesting to see where Tom is at as a person. Whereas Jason Segel.
But you're saying that there's no drama. There's the story of the initial story of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where he got over Sarah Marshall, yes, that part might be over, but he's now starting on a brand new career path. He has a new romance.
Tom.
Do we absolutely know that he and Autumn are dating at the end of that? We don't.
Do we absolutely know that Jason Segel is still with Mila Kunis?
And now you're making my you're starting to make my point for me now too.
I think those 2 points kind of invalidate each other because we both don't know where they're at.
And so again, we have to say, if you don't want to go that route, if you want to invalidate both of our points on there and start from square one, I'm fine with that. So therefore, let's look at the films themselves and if these films lead to a sequel. You said it yourself that Tom is starting the cycle all over again. Well, if you relate to that character, great. I know more people who find Tom to be a whiny, annoying little prick who doesn't learn from his mistakes. That that seeing another sequel like that sounds like a horror show.
But it would be different in the sequel because he would grow, and I think Mark Webb, if he came back to direct it, would make a splendid, very unique film, just like the first one, which has a huge cult following.
If he couldn't grow in those, the titular 500 days, what makes us think that he's going to grow in 10 years? That's kind of a,
Tom did grow in some aspects, but then he also rebounded in others, and that's who we are as humans. As humans, we always fall into our base habits. That's real life. 500 Days of Summer is real life. Forgetting Sarah Marshall is make-believe. Jason Segel falls in love with the most gorgeous girl and ends up with her and has a dream career. That's not real life to me.
So you're going to knock my film down for being quote unquote make believe. First of all, it's a movie. Movies are typically make believe. Second of all, romantic comedies as a whole in the genre are make believe. These this is virtually science fiction at
for sure. But I think more people relate more to 500 Days of Summer than they do to Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
And I can tell you that for a fact that is absolutely incorrect because
500 Days of Summer has a huge cult following. More people talk about 500 Days of Summer than Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Has an even bigger cult following.
It does not.
It most certainly does.
500 Days of Summer is blowing up on TikTok. It's all over the place. Even younger people, like whatever generation we're now, is now watching 500 Days of Summer and relating to it and understanding it and going through the whole scope of feelings that I went through, thinking that Tom's the bad guy, that Summer's the bad girl.
Will actually grow as as human beings, whereas Tom really doesn't show any of that growth, and you even said that in your opening.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall is not memorable at all.
Oh, how do you figure it's not memorable? Where else are you going to see a puppet rock opera with Dracula? Come on, you're going to tell me that that's not memorable? You're not going to tell me the opening scene with him dropping
It's
trowel?
an unforgettable film.
No.
Yes, it is. It's a cult classic.
All right, guys.
Exactly. Commercial is a cult classic. Thank you,
guys. Thank you. We're gonna go ahead and go into the 1-minute closings. Shaun, you are up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
First of all, Tom is not an incel. Never thought I'd say something like that. But he's not. I think he's a misunderstood person. And what people like about their heroes is watching them stumble. And at the end of the film, Tom did make a slight stumble. Just because you could see it in his eyes when he broke the fourth wall, he's going back into those romantic tropes, but we don't know what happened to him. And I feel like all of us kind of have grown over time since that film came out. Tom will be more mature. He's going to be 10 years older. There's so much more for him to realize to do. The world of 500 Days of Summer is just so much more entertaining, so much more creative than Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I'd rather see a sequel to that film. We have the amazing split screen of expectations and reality. We have the cartoons that pop in the scene, in that one scene in the film. We have Tom looking in the reflection and seeing Harrison Ford. It's just a way more memorable film. Whereas Jason Segel, everything's wrapped up, and a sequel just wouldn't do anything for anyone.
All right. Will, over to you. Final minute.
Sean said in both his 1 minute and his 2 minute that Tom shows that the cycle is starting anew, and therefore is proving that there is very little growth at best in Tom's character. So watching him do the same cycle again 10 years later does not seem like a good prospect for a sequel. Whereas if we're going to go by the 10-year model, after Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I want to see what 10 years has done to Peter's career. I want to see if he's done more puppet operas. I want to see if he is just if he's being a theater maven to begin with. I want to see if he's gone back to Hollywood. There's a lot of places that could go. And plus, watching him grow as a person, watching his relationship grow as a person in a brand new field like that, that's exciting. That's human connection. Yes, this might be goofy, but you know what? He's saying that the film's not memorable. The film has just the best jokes, the best one-liners. Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig, you have all these great cast members. It's absolutely memorable.
All right. So, guys, another great argument. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back and bring the judges in for the deliberation. While you guys are making final thoughts, potentially just a couple of quick fact checks on the round. Because the actress's name was said more than once, just to throw it out there. Mila Kunis, who is the love interest by the end of Forgetting Sarah Marshall, is obviously not Sarah Marshall. That character's name is Rachel Jansen. In terms of the two movies, there is some parallel in terms of how the movies end. Obviously, over the course of the film, the titular, in terms of in the title, relationship ends and a new one it begins. While neither film ends with official confirmation that either couple stay together, be it Peter and Rachel or Tom and Autumn, the heavy indication as the movie ends is that there is new love in both instances. Both characters also do switch careers at the end of their movies. In Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Peter is a composer working within television. At the end, it seems to indicate that based off the success of his play, he's going to switch to composing more for himself. Same thing in 500 Days of Summer. Tom is a greeting card writer at the start of the film. By the end of the film, he's applying for a spot, I believe, within an architecture firm would be the exact place he applies to. And then last but not least, the most interesting one of these, the definition of incel, which is short for involuntary celibate, according to great places such as Urban Dictionary, is someone who is celibate but does not want to be. And other definitions also include the concepts of hostility towards women and men who are sexually active. And also, they typically have a history of loneliness and poor mental health due to their, let's call it, lifestyle. While looking up the concept of is Tom an incel from 500 Days of Summer, there is certainly a discussion potentially, but there is no definitive answer. However, I can more than say that Tom Haverford from Parks and Recreation is an incel, and that was decided upon by Reddit when I researched this. So you're welcome, Aziz Ansari. And that's the best accusation someone's ever made against you. That said, Chris, I'm going to go up to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the selling point?
Okay, forgetting about the incel and everything, I don't want to
Oh, let's move past the incel. Yes.
I met with Rome. I think he made a strong argument with forgetting so much of the thing, where they should take over about the relationship. I think Sean got stuck up and he kind of tried to a couple of times with the, if we're doing the same cycle over again, the incel thing, I don't think made a stronger, especially counterpoint saying no, we don't want to push ourselves to see the whole movie over and over again. If that would be the difference. So I mean,
Okay, Richie, down to you.
Yeah, this is a great food. Been making my job really hard. Yeah, I can listen to these guys. I can listen to these guys for hours. This has been a great debate. Ultimately, I went with Shaun. I'll leave it to Zach. I went with Shaun because I think he explained why there's more grounds for a sequel for 500 Days of Summer and much more media than Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and yeah, what he put forward was intriguing. So I went to Shaun.
Okay, and then that means Zach, then you go to you for the tiebreaker.
I ultimately went with Will. More, he was able to give great counters against the character of Tom, but also was able to fully explain what we could definitely see in the future sequel for Forgetting Sarah Marshall. So for that, I
Okay.
went.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in the back as we bring the competitors back in, and we will move on to question number 3. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move into question number 3. And in this one, we are going to be discussing a classic piece of literature in film, because obviously the classic stories, the characters in history we all know make recurring appearances in film. And whether it be a upcoming sequel on what is a technical related franchise, or the third in a franchise that we've been waiting on for a long time. I don't know, because I guess the MCU owned one of their guys' souls. The question here is, what is they did though? What is the best film featuring Sherlock Holmes? There's a lot of options to choose from, and yet I bet the first two that jump to your mind are the ones we went for. But go ahead. Hey, that doesn't mean they're not great films, though, because there's been some great films in the last few years with Sherlock Holmes. So let's jump into it. With that said, Will, you are back up first on this one, so the timer will start for you, sir, when you begin speaking.
So I chose Enola Holmes, which is on paper a very odd choice, because you would think that if I'm going to answer this question, I would have chosen a film where Sherlock Holmes is the main character. But here's the reason why I didn't. Yes, Sherlock Holmes is there, and he's beautifully played by Henry Cavill. But Millie Bobby Brown as the sister Enola Holmes, who is just as smart, just as clever, just as street smart as Sherlock, if not more so, is such a compelling character. And this movie has such a wonderful narrative, not only just because it's a great detective story, but it wraps around a central plot of women's rights, which can easily hit home today with a modern audience, just as it did in Victorian England. Enola Holmes is a wonderful movie, and the fact that it was kind of dismissed just by being a Netflix original is an absolute shame.
And time. All right, Shaun, back over to you.
My pick is 2009's Sherlock Holmes, directed by Guy Ritchie, starring the incredible RDJ, Jude Law, Rachel McAdams, and Mark Strong. This was a phenomenal film when it came out. I saw it in theaters. I think it's the best Sherlock Holmes film, and the best featuring Sherlock Holmes. RDJ gives the most charismatic performance, one of the most charismatic performances he's ever given. The other film has Superman as Sherlock Holmes, that just is a big hulking person who doesn't really seem like Sherlock Holmes. I think Guy Ritchie took a lot of really great chances with this film, especially the slow motion action sequences. Just looking at the chemistry between RDJ and Jude Law, and also just the what was I gonna say? I'll say more when it's my time.
You got 2 minutes to figure out what you were gonna say. It's all right. All right, we're gonna go back over to Will. 2 minutes on the clock when you're ready.
So Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes did some very interesting things with Sherlock Holmes. It brought up the fact that he was also a pugilist and a martial artist and knew, a bunch of these, little, scientific secrets. But the one thing that it absolutely fails at is it takes away the heart of what Sherlock Holmes is. It's a detective story, and there's very, very little detection in Sherlock Holmes 2009. It focuses much more on his drug addiction and how clever he is and how many times he puts his foot in his mouth and needs to be punched in the face than it does him actually being a detective. Enola Holmes, on the other hand, shows the detective being an actual detective. And not only that, it shows Henry Cavill, yes, he is Superman, but he is not just a hulking presence just because he's tall. He's electrifying as as the brother, as these, as quote unquote the second fiddle on that, because he himself is using his detective skills to find Enola Holmes and make sure that she's safe and try and bring her home. So there's a lot of familiar connections on there. So it's heartwarming, it's funny. This film breaks the fourth wall multiple times. We've never really seen that in a Sherlock Holmes, and I don't know how we haven't seen that in previous Sherlock Holmes films. Because Robert Downey Jr. would have been great breaking the fourth wall. Millie Bobby Brown steals the show. Not only did she produce this movie at the young age that she did, but she's breaking the fourth wall. She is using just outstanding kung fu moves. She is putting you get to see her put these pieces together, and she is and her and Henry Cavill are just the iceberg of the great cast, which, and that includes Sam Claflin and Helena Bonham Carter. Enola Holmes has everything that Sherlock Holmes 2009 does not, and that's why this film is light years ahead of it.
And time. All right, back over to you, Shaun.
I'm going to read two quotes by two critics that reviewed Alona Holmes. One is, there should have been more specifically ingenious deducting and solving from Enola. Code breaking isn't the same thing. She doesn't do a lot of sleuthing or detective work in the film. She does a lot of code breaking, which is very, very different. We get a lot of sleuthing and detective work in the Guy Ritchie film. It's all over, especially in the scene when Sherlock is talking to Watson and Rachel McAdams, and they're going over the symbol and the images on the floor. He's deducing all the different Mark Strong's character, all the different organizations, how this all connects by just the symbols on the floor. And it's a scene that goes on for 5 minutes, and he's explaining all of it, and it's a beautiful piece of detective work. Going back to what you said, how this is a modernized film, especially for female audiences. Another reviewer says this film, Enola, was well intended, if sometimes lacking in subtlety. Enola Holmes offers a fine-spirited reminder that a traditional story can always be retold, although it might need more refined teachings on feminism next time. It's very on the head. Enola is like, well, men think I should do this. We've seen this before. It didn't break new ground. Plus, you know what? It is a Netflix film. It looks like a made-for-TV film because it was made for TV. It doesn't look good. The cinematography doesn't look good. It looks very dry. It looks worse than the BBC Sherlock TV show. And that's sad because this show, I'm sure, had a higher budget. I'm sure Aaron will fact check that. But going back to the Guy Ritchie film, it has far better performances. You really get the detective work. The new things they've added to Sherlock Holmes, like the fighting, the slow motion, him telling you what he's doing, as the moves he's going to make are great.
All right, so we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
So
The
it's great.
chemistry
It's great. It's
between
great. Hey,
Downey
hey.
and Watson are just fantastic. They're like a gay couple in the film, and they are the best part of the 2009 Sherlock Holmes film. Just the chemistry, the bickering, the fighting, the love. It's like a romance,
And
which we have not seen that in another Sherlock
and you
Holmes
find
film.
all of that better in the sequel, Game of Shadows, which is a far superior one to the 2009 film, because you get all of that, plus you get, detective work.
It's
Whereas
absolutely not a better sequel.
it absolutely is. But I want to bring up something here. It's great that you found it's good you found like 2 or 3 reviewers who back up your statement that this isn't a great film. That's great. My film sits at a 91% Rotten Tomatoes rating, whereas yours is only at a 69. So clearly critics agree more that Enola Holmes is better by a long shot.
What's the fan rating of each film? What's higher?
The fan rating
audience score.
The fan rating is actually higher on Enola. Sorry to break your heart on that one.
I think my film is still a better film because it's actually a film and not made for TV. The cinematography is just way better, especially even the score. When you listen to the score, Hans Zimmer does such a great score. It's so memorable. And even when I watch other Sherlock Holmes films, the Hans Zimmer score comes into my head. I can't remember a single musical cue from Enola Holmes.
Yeah, great. You don't remember a single musical cue, but we're not talking about musical cues, are we here, Sean?
The whole thing is the film. Everything is the film.
Everything is the film. That's great. So everything is the film. So Enola Holmes, winking at the camera and making you laugh when she's in danger. That's everything. You don't get anything like that in Sherlock Holmes. You get
Robert Downey Jr. is hilarious.
Let me finish. You got to talk. All the cast members have a distinct role. The only 3 people in the entire huge cast of Sherlock Holmes 2009 are Mark Strong, Robert Downey Jr., and Jude Law. And Jude Law looks bored half the times in that movie.
He absolutely does not.
He absolutely does.
He is having a fantastic time with Robert Downey Jr. The chemistry that they have, as I said, the bickering, the fighting, the quarrels that they have are some of the best parts of the film.
And all that bickering is still even better.
And going back to Mark Strong, what a great villain. Who's the villain in your film? It's not even memorable. Is it?
It is extremely memorable because there's multiple villains.
And none of them are memorable. And none of them are as memorable as Mark Strong.
Oh, you don't think Fiona
Who's just chewing scenery?
You don't think there's nothing wrong with chewing scenery because Robert Downey Jr. does nothing but chew scenery.
No, I said Mark Strong is chewing scenery. That is a good thing. Mark Strong is killing it in my film. He's Mark
Strong is nothing compared to Moriarty in Game of Shadows. So no, he's not.
Who are the villains in your film?
You have Fiona Shaw as the headmaster. You have the society trying to stop the vote.
And what's compelling about them? How are they chewing scenery?
About them? Trying to.
When I watched the film, I was bored out of my mind watching them.
If you're going to ask me a question, Sean, shut the hell up and let me answer the question.
Well, I'm still going to say what I'm going to say afterwards. I found those villains in the film very boring. They don't stand out that much either.
But that's great because it still ties the plot together and shows how horrible this vote, how needed this vote absolutely was, and anyone stopping that vote is by nature a villain, and it's absolutely wonderful watching this ticking clock sequence trying to get that vote to actually happen.
I disagree with what you said about Henry Cavill. He's horribly miscast.
Henry Cavill is amazing. Is that
he's playing a sexy Sherlock Holmes. Robert Downey Jr. is playing a drugged up, confused, narcissistic.
All right, you guys have 1 minute left on the round each. Will, you're up first.
So saying that Henry Cavill's Sherlock Holmes is sexist almost proves to me that he didn't watch the movie, because if you actually watch the movie, yes, he almost shares his brother's sentiments, but then he learns from those very, very quickly and actually gets on Enola's side. So he's trying to get her back, but not for the same reasons that his brother Mycroft is trying to do. He actually wants her to succeed, but he wants to succeed in a different way than she is going. But even if you don't know, if you don't remember, quote unquote, remember Fiona Shaw as this cruel headmistress, even if you don't remember this society trying to stop this vote because a bunch of rich people don't think that women should have the right to vote. Even if you claim to not remember any of that, you still have to admit that the screenplay is better, the action sequences are better, and Enola Holmes is a better detective than Sherlock did in Sherlock Holmes 2009.
And time. All right, and we'll go over to Shaun for the final minute of this round.
I didn't say Henry Cavill was sexist. I said he was sexy. He was playing a sexy Sherlock Holmes. Obviously, I watched the film because I know that in the end of the film, Sherlock Holmes wants to become the guardian of Enola Holmes, which means he's not sexist at all. He wants her to succeed, blah, blah, blah. My film is a better theatrical film. It's more appeasing to audiences because we see Sherlock in a brand new light. He's doing action martial arts scenes. They're slow mode. They're very interesting, especially when he's narrating and telling you exactly how he will take down an opponent. He's going up against Mark Strong, which is a very compelling villain, especially their end of fight scene on the bridge at the end of the film, which is a great just end of the film. The relationship between Watson and Sherlock Holmes is so much more compelling and better than Minecraft and Sherlock in the Enola Holmes film. They're just having so much fun, and the chemistry is just off the scales.
And time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in the back as I bring in the judges for the deliberation on this round. All right, so to run a couple of fact checks down, despite the fact that it was released as a Netflix film, a lot of people may not know that it actually wasn't produced by Netflix. Enola Holmes was actually produced by Legendary Pictures, who had previously, Millie Bobby Brown had worked under them for Godzilla King of the Monsters and, of course, Godzilla vs. Kong. And she had partnered with them in order to produce this film. However, when the pandemic began, Warner Brothers made the decision to sell the film to Netflix in order to guarantee a profit on it, rather than either delaying it nor trying to put it out in the pandemic. Now, Netflix doesn't often release full conclusive numbers, but I believe the best I could find is that the movie probably cost around $50 million to make, because that's around what the sale of the movie was from Warner Brothers to Netflix. And oftentimes, when streaming services are buying products, they are buying them at about production budget rate, so that the studios are making their money back, and then the streaming service is not taking the gamble on the film. But there isn't an actual confirmed budget, nor could I actually find a confirmed budget on an episode of Sherlock. So unfortunately, I can't fact check that one, but I tried, trust me. And then in terms of who the villain is in Enola Holmes, multiple different sources that I looked up pointed to different things. For what it's worth, specifically the character of Fiona Shaw, who was referenced by she's an actress, but the character she plays was never personally brought up in any of the articles that I read. The two most mentioned names were Frances Delatour's character, the Dowager, and Sam Claflin as Mycroft Holmes were the two names that seemed to be mentioned as the antagonists, although there wasn't one conclusive answer as to who is the antagonist, which obviously could point to multiple or however you choose to interpret that. So with that said, Richie, I go to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point of the round?
All right. Again, it's really both really good. Ultimately, I went with Shaun because I think he did a good job explaining, why the Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Sherlock Holmes is more memorable, and how just overall, so the better film, and it had a more distinct villain. So I went with Shaun, but it was tough.
All right, down to Zach.
I'm going with Will again, more because I feel like he brought more examples of why Enola Holmes is better, referencing the ratings and also the humor. And he just had great counters against 2009 Sherlock.
Okay, and then over to Chris.
Yeah, I went the same way. I went with Will. I think Shaun made some good arguments. I thought Will just point out, Strong and all Holmes. Point out how 2009 Sherlock Holmes did have the detective skill. He pointed out specific example of where it's real at, join at it. And see Strong got cut out in the whole Henry Cavill thing, and then some other random stuff, and Will just that Shaun and his movie and the case itself.
All right. Well, judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back because your winner by a final knockout score of 3-0, the Virtuoso, Will Cohen, who's fresh off of a heart attack. It's the one thing that I don't like about the editing is we don't always get to catch the most genuine reactions. You should have seen him. He was clutching his chest like he had just finished a hot dog eating contest. It was incredible, and nobody else saw it except for me because he was backstage. Will, I have to start with congratulations, man. You know that's a big pullout for you because you guys were going at it like I almost felt like Michael Vick making you two pit bulls fight because it was absolutely incredible to watch. How do you feel coming out with a victory like this in a matchup like this?
So, to get a victory itself over someone like Shaun Hunter says a lot. That's a statement unto itself. Knocking Shaun Hunter out, the guy who has 2 knockouts of his own, is beyond, like, there's no words for that. I was like, in my head, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I knocked him out before this match? I said that to myself before the match. It's like, yeah. That Jake Gyllenhaal question, I don't know how the fuck I argued that one. Everyone loves Prisoners. I am one of the only people on earth that hates that movie. And somehow
And
I
now
can
Sean's
make
clutching his
everyone.
chest. Oh,
But yeah, somehow like everyone like ranks that like in their top 5, if not, like top 10, if not top 5. I hated that film, and somehow I got the victory on that. I was shocked. And then the other two, like, everything was split decisions.
it was.
So this literally, this literally one person could have swayed the entire match. And somehow I came up on this. We were both fighting like just rabid animals. It's like maybe Michael Vick got in, maybe Michael Vick went away from pit bulls and like managed to coke up some tigers. That's what it felt like.
My joke
Felt
was
like I was
funnier, but
fighting
I
up a
appreciate the
coked up
sentiment.
tiger. But no, like the score does not show what Shaun did tonight.
No.
And
Unfortunately for 90% of the people, the way the game is formatted, it never does. And I encourage you to bask in this because you're on to the next round of the tournament. It only gets tougher from here. And of course, you were on the video with me discussing it, so you know exactly where this leads to next. You will be taking on the winner of John Marr versus Caleb Hansen, which you very confidently so predicted in said match that John Marr will more than likely take the victory. So in your own head, do you feel that, okay, now I got to mentally prepare to take on somebody who I'd say maybe out of everyone in this league, you would say is the competitor you're closest with? Does Caleb, in your mind at this point, stand any sort of chance? How do you kind of feel about the next round's matchup?
so without spoiling things too much, just talking to John, he keeps on using the phrase bloodbath a lot. When John is that confident, and I do mean that confident, that means he is going to just demolish everything in his path. Now, again, because judging is subjective and this is a subjective format, could that confidence translate into a win? Of course it can. Could it translate into a loss? It certainly can. Now, this is one of those things. Since John joined the league, I have dreamt of what a match between the two of us would be. Because if you think that Sean's and my match was entertaining, the batshit craziness that would happen with John and I bringing the energy that we bring from other leagues together when we show up in this format, like, you will have to call the fire department because shit's getting lit on fire. Now, does that mean that I'm looking forward to fighting him and thinking it's going to be a breeze? Hell no. A part of me does wish that I would have faced Caleb because I might be able to beat Caleb. John is such an unknown quantity. It's going to be a harder battle. But either way, I think that that's going to be another match to watch out for, if only just because John being such a brand new rookie and being the what was the number 3 seed in this tournament, that he's going to be one to look for in this league to begin with, let alone this tournament. So either way, this is just the start of things to come.
All right. Well, sir, congratulations on the victory. I will let you go for the night, but congratulations. We will see you in the next round as I bring in your opponent. And Shaun, I mean, nobody wants their season, so to speak, to end this way, especially given the heights that you have reached. And we know that losing sucks. Like, let's not get over that. And nobody likes to fucking lose. So taking all that into account, how are you kind of feeling walking out of this?
To quote Captain Jean-Luc Picard, it's quite possible to do everything perfect and still lose. That's not weakness, that's life. And although I don't feel like I did everything perfect in this match, it happens. I prepared. I had a bit of a brain fart during the last question, just trying to get my thoughts out and reading my notes and whatnot. But Will just brought it. He destroyed me. I'm glad it was split decisions for all of our questions. That gives me, it wasn't like a total demolishing in my head, because who knows, if I had said one more thing or countered one more time, that could have swayed a judge on one of those questions. So who knows? But yeah, at the end of the day, losing sucks, but this was still a blast, and Will just brought the fire, and that's why I said all those nice things about him. Like, they're all true. See, wasn't lying. Like,
Absolutely not. No.
he's very intelligent and brought it. He's very articulate, and like he had a lot of good counters. Like, I knew Will would bring it, and I can't believe he hates Prisoners, but it makes so much more sense why he was so fired up. I was trying to argue against Zodiac, which is an amazing film. Like, no wonder he. But yeah, no, it was awesome. It was a super fun match.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so, yeah, as I said, when we look back on collectively, I guess, since we never took like a full prolonged break, I would call everything since day one sort of the first season of this iteration. I mean, you came in, your first match was against a former champion, and
Undefeated
you
champion.
took undefeated champion. That's absolutely correct as well.
Yeah.
And took him all the way to sudden death in the first match, the first sudden death of the league. And that's not counting everything else that went down in that match. And then from there, you go into the tournament, you play on, you make it to a number one contenders match. You have 2 of those before the year's out. So while the record of 4-4 with 2 knockouts doesn't tell that story, and it never does for a lot of people. I mean, you have to be like fucking Henry, who's like 36-1 at this point, to have that record reflect it. You've had a great season, do you want to come back next year in 2023? Are you looking forward to it, or what's kind of the thought process? And I always tell people, no commitment, but what's kind of your feeling? I wouldn't put you on the spot like that.
No, I really I love talking about film, and I love debating, and I love the format. It just brings me back to the old movie fight days, especially watching those guys do it.
We did rip them off, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say it.
No, that's fine.
But I think like I did do better earlier in my career, and earlier in the career when I started, we were in full on COVID lockdown, especially up here in Canada. I had way more time to prepare. It's definitely harder, at least for me, the way I prepare, and it just takes me longer. It is harder with real life and things to do. Everything's open now. Would I return next year? I don't know if I could put the time into it. I don't want to waste an opponent's time. I know some people can get away with not preparing and still crush people. I am not one of those people. But yeah, I don't know if I would return or not. I'd have to think about it. But I do love the league, and I love Aaron. You're a fantastic host, and thanks for putting all this together. But it's something I have to sit down and think about.
Absolutely, man. Well, we'll have those discussions off air. We'll figure it out. And even if it's not immediately, we do hope to see you back at some point in the future, sir. So congratulations on a great run so far. And I will look forward to the day that it continues. Till then, we will see you, sir.
And I can't believe he hates Prisoners. That is like mine. And it's not that much torture stuff. But yeah, I'm out of here.
All right. Well, guys, that is it. That is the match. Will Cohen moves on to the next round with a very, very impressive knockout victory in his back pocket. And again, like we said, it's not confirmed. Maybe Caleb shocks, apparently Will, who's so confident in John, and makes it through and gives him a run for his money. But we will get to see that next weekend, as next Saturday, John Marr versus Caleb Hansen will be going up on the channel. So tune in and check that out. If you guys missed last weekend's tournament match, we had the number 2 seed Joe Hot Fuzz Fairley take on Zach Shelton. So you guys can go tune back in and watch that. No spoilers on that yet. And actually, another one of our judges also played at the weekend as well in Richie Goodacre. He had his third match against Kevin Moreno go up. So if you guys want to see a little more of them, you can go check out their debate matches that went up on the channel. With that said, though, I want to say congratulations once again to Will. A great game to Shaun. Thank you to our judges, Zach, Chris, and Richie. And on behalf of everybody here at the Movie Battleground, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.